For the remainder of this episode, I am going to do a Q&A that came in from a listener named Meg. She actually had several questions, all of which were really, really good, but I'm not going to answer all of them in this episode. I'll save some for another episode because my responses were a little bit lengthy since we're just coming out of a conversation with Bailey Lee, who is bold and fearless with color. I thought I would stick with the theme and answer the questions Meg had that were related to color. Okay, so her first question is, most of our new home has been given the landlord special and everything is painted white, which I hate. So far, I've prioritized painting 2 rooms that I spent a lot of time in, our sunroom and my sewing room. I love the colors we picked, but they both came about very randomly. One was a clay color that both my fiance and I thought looked nice on a whim. And the other, I just matched to a yoga mat that I have that is a really pretty color. I'm worried that if we keep going this way, we might have a very mismatched looking home. Should we think ahead about a full house palette of colors that look good together? Is it okay if our main floor color palette looks different from the upstairs? And is it weird if you walk into the next room and the vibe is totally different from the last one? And here's what I had to say to that. I do think how the colors flow from one room to another matters, mostly if you can see into one room from another. So I always sit in every seat in a room to see what's in my line of sight and consider how the colors of the walls that butt up against each other are looking. The simplest answer to your question is, do you like how they look together? Maybe you do want to create a striking contrast between 2 rooms because they have very different purposes. Or maybe you prefer a subtler shift in mood from one room to another. I think paying attention to how you want to feel and the emotional experience you want to create in each of your rooms is your best guide. But we're talking about a whole house palette, which I think is very difficult to do if you just moved into the house, unless you're a professional. So if you love color, which it sounds like Meg does, my advice would be to think in terms of the underlying feeling of a color. I could use words like tone or shade or even hue. Those are technical terms that have very specific definitions, and maybe I'll do an episode one day all on that. But for right now, I'm going to just talk to you like you're a regular person and not a color scientist. So I think it's most helpful to give you an example. First of all, imagine the color wheel. We all probably remember this. You've got your 3 primary colors. And then when you start mixing those together, you get your secondary colors. Then if you mix those together, you're getting your tertiary colors. At this point, there has been no gray, white, or black inserted into any of these colors. When you add white, that's called tint. When you add black, that's called shade. And when you add gray, that is called tone. So when you're looking at paint samples or a paint strip, really look as closely as you can. I think it's easiest when you put similar strips next to each other, strips that are all from the same primary color family or hue. And then the differences become a little bit more clear because most likely, whatever color you're looking at, it hasn't only had white put into it or only black or only gray. It's had one of those colors plus maybe a couple of tertiary colors mixed in, plus maybe a secondary color mixed in like brown or orange or pink. If you can't detect this right away, you're in good company. Don't fret. And I promised you a real person's example. I want you to think of the color terracotta. Some terracottas are going to lean more heavily on orange, while others more heavily on brown. The more orange you have, the brighter the color will look and feel, the more energetic. It might be good for a playroom or an office. Whereas the more brown you have, well, it's going to look earthier and a little bit more like it came from nature. Okay, got those 2 terracottas pictured in your mind? Now, let's say you gravitate toward the earthier one. Whatever that means to you. My husband and I tend to call those colors muddy, which a lot of people don't like. They don't like the connotation of mud. So if you want to use the term earthy, be my guest. The point is, I suggest you then look for the earthier versions of other colors for other rooms. That's going to give you a little bit more feel of continuity than if the underlying colors were kind of all over the place. You could even consider playing with color value. So for instance, let's say you wanted to paint your bedroom a deep, earthy terracotta color, then you might consider a lighter terracotta color for the ensuite bathroom, which means it'll be sort of a peachier shade, but with more brown in it to tone down the pastel quality that a pure white would give it. I hope this makes sense. Okay, I'm going to answer another question that she had where she wasn't really asking about color necessarily, but my answer does have something to do with color. Meg says, in our new home, which is larger than our previous space, embracing slow style feels like I will need to be more comfortable with empty space because we not only need to pace ourselves in decorating to find sustainable items that are the right fit, but also because we can't afford to go nuts and buy everything all at once. Do you have any advice on how to live with empty spaces in the meantime? I like trying to make a clean, well-organized space, but I'm definitely not a minimalist, and for me, all white bare walls don't feel nice. Broadly speaking, my advice in this situation is think of these empty spaces as an opportunity rather than an obligation. Our second home was really big, and there were two rooms in particular that I didn't know what to do with. So I used these opportunities to play with color. I purposefully chose bold colors simply because I loved them. I wasn't worried about how anything would match or go with these colors because I didn't have a lot of furniture. They were fairly empty spaces. But allowing myself to push beyond what most people would call reasonable colors really allowed me to get comfortable with putting a stake in the ground and saying, this is me, this is the color that I love. Paint is one of the least expensive ways to express yourself, so bite the bullet and start painting those empty rooms. And then, once you've lived with the colors for a while, start to gather intel on how they make you feel at different times of the day or over time. You're going to learn something about yourself, about how you react to certain colors and how you feel about them flowing into each other from different vantage points in the room. So I hope this has been helpful. If you have a question, I'm happy to give you my answer. Just email me at Zandra@slowstylehome.com.